Ndị be anyị ekene m unu. Asị m ka ọ dịrị na anyị na mma n'ụbọchị nke taa. Dịka isi na-esonyere anyị na Igbo Media, anyị si na ya ọbụla ị chọrọ na ihe eweta ya, maka na ọ bụ nkwa anyị kwere unu na ga na-enye unu ya bụ news nke na-eme na Igbo community and obodo anyị nọ n'ime ya. Dịka anyị si kwuo unu nkwa, ya bụkwanụ nkwa ka anyị na-agbakwanụ mbọ ka anyị mezuo olu n'elu akwụkwọ itinyelu news kwuru na-anụ ihe na-eme n'obodo dị iche iche n'obodo a. Daalụ nne Igbo ọma na-ege ntị. Enwere iwe na anyị ji asụ Igbo eme ya, ka anyị si wee na-ele iche n'ebo ndị Igbo and ka anyị wee na-akwado asụsụ anyị. Dịka ọ dị otu onye nna anyị n'iru akwụkwọ ya bụ Arise News bụ ihe anyị wetara unu. O nwere nnukwu ihe mere n'iru akwụkwọ a, ebi ọzọ ebi. Nnamdi Kanu prophecy has come to pass. Gee ya bụ ife, ị ga-esia ya ọfụma. Ị drọpụrụ anyị kọmentị gị gbasata maka ihe i chere, bikos anyị ama mkpa okwu afa n'iru akwụkwọ. Ọzọ dịka ibe ya bụ Igbo Media ka anyị si wee wetara unu ya. Alright, over to you, sir.
Face once and for all, and I'm grateful that the Senate, in its wisdom, has seen the need to invite all the service chiefs or all those involved in the security architecture of the country.
The meeting has been postponed until Tuesday next week, following the absence of the National Security Advisor, Nuhu Ribadu. Ribadu was said to be in another crucial security meeting with service chiefs from the United Kingdom. The Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, was also conspicuously absent. In the absence of the two key actors, the security meeting was postponed with invitations extended to the defense ministers, police affairs ministers, the Minister of Interior Olubunmi Tunji-Ojo, and the Minister of Finance, Wale Edu. Senate explained that it needed to have a full house of Nigeria's security architecture to have a robust overview of the country's security situation.
This 10th Senate is the issue of the security of our nation. That we should discuss it exhaustively, meet with relevant authorities, heads of the various agencies and departments involved in security, with a view to finding a lasting solution.
The Senate is determined to have a holistic overview of the security situation in the country based on the briefing by the major stakeholders that are charged with the responsibility of securing this country around before the briefing is taken. I think what the Senate did is the right step in the right direction in order to have an all-embracing and holistic overview of the security briefing.
The security meeting will now come up on Tuesday at 11 a.m. Omo Bazwai, Arise News.
Security in the spotlight, Rufai, and very well so, as we've seen the spate of insecurity, rising insecurity in the country. Your take on this story with regards to the Senate and the service chiefs?
So I'm happy the Senate is saying this, because Nigerians have talked about this constantly, that Abuja is not safe. There's insecurity everywhere. Most parts of this country are not safe. I was in Abuja a couple of weeks ago, and I saw how quickly people were ready to go indoors. On a Saturday night, as at 9-10 o'clock, most parts of town emptied out. Or maybe it was the part of town I was in. There's a general fear. But we have not also done a lot. And I say we, I mean the security forces have not really done a lot at ensuring that we dispel that fear. Yes, they claim they've made some arrests of some criminals. They paraded a criminal. They have arrested a bandit or a criminal or a kidnapper. But the question is, the real daredevil people have not been arrested. The people that took that Nabena family and the Rio family and they hurt them, they've not been arrested. The case in Ekiti, yes, we've made some headway, but we've not gotten to the end of that matter. Recently, the National Security Advisor had the second of its kind meeting, with the UK authorities as regards to Nigerian UK security, parley. They had the first meeting last year in 2022 around February, I mean from the 31st of January to February, where they talked about many things, you know, security locally, you know, also port security, the Yaoundé framework, maritime collaboration, and other things like that. And they also talked extensively, you know, about the, you know, the G7 plus Friends of the Sahel, regional security, internal security, the Northeast insurgency, all of that. But we have these parties and all of that. They're training our security special forces. They also talked about the need for human rights, and that's why I was taken aback when police officers were arresting protesters that were protesting the cost of living in Niger, which is quite sad. I would have thought the police should expend that energy in arresting criminals and bandits that are disturbing the peace of this nation. We have those parties, we have those collaborations, we have those frameworks. But something definitely is missing. And what I think is missing is proper harmonization of things. We still have a lot of silo effects in our security echelon. We cannot seem to be able to bring everything together and effectively share information. We've not been able to get to the root of the matter as regards this insecurity. The Senate calling these top security chiefs to come speak, I don't think will change anything. They were there to speak a couple of weeks ago.
December. Yeah.
And what did they say? Oh, these were the challenges we faced. Nothing has changed. In fact, it has increased since then. And that's why President Tinubu, welcome back from your holiday in Paris, in France. But you need to put your foot on the ground, because everybody is complaining about the situation and the state of things and insecurity in the FCT.
All right, Doctor.
Okay, well, let me start by referring again to the editorial by The Economist. I think that was dated January 24. Kidnappers wreak havoc all over Nigeria. That was, more or less the title. And what The Economist was saying in that editorial is that Nigeria's elite, leadership elite, do not act except the thing gets close to them, to their doorstep. And that the methods that they adopt all the time are the same familiar methods adopted, previously that have not worked. So it's very interesting, therefore, to see the Senate President and other members of the Senate saying that, FCT is under threat. There is problem in the Federal Capital Territory. If that is why they have woken up, that's unfortunate. But the truth of the matter, as the Senate President himself admitted, is that, look, there's insecurity in all parts of Nigeria, and that has become a major problem. People cannot sleep peacefully in their homes. We had the cases of persons who were abducted. We had the cases, even in the Federal Capital Territory, of a military barracks being attacked and persons being, kidnapped from, military estates. So if even soldiers are not safe, if policemen are not safe, who else will be safe? In other parts of the country, traditional rulers are not even safe. So in other words, we are all involved in this. And consistently, the service chiefs have been calling for collaboration. They've been saying that it's not just the security agencies alone that can do it. So this is, apart from the Senate performing its oversight function, yet another illustration of the fact that, yes, we all have a collective responsibility. Now, they summoned the service chiefs to appear. Some of them were there yesterday, Chief of Naval Staff, Chief of Army Staff, Chief of Defense Staff, But in its wisdom, the Senate then decided that perhaps, it should be a more expanded, invitation list to include not just the service chiefs, but also include the Minister of Defense, the Minister of State for Defense, the Minister of Finance, and other critical officials of state, including even the Interior Minister. So what they want to do against next week is to have an expanded list. And some of the other persons that they have added to the list, you'll recall, are still at the attending meetings at the villa. Either they are doing Daddy Oyoyo, or they are attending the National Emergency Committee meeting on food insecurity. I guess that will end today. So, for planning purposes, I think it's also a good idea to have an expanded list. However, what is it that is new that these service chiefs will come and tell us? Their story is very familiar because they've been holding on to the same narrative all the time. They say, for example, that they are under-equipped. They say, for example, that they need more resources. The police say they are undermanned, they need more personnel. These are the same stories that will come up, and then they will give commitment, and what you hear at the end of the day is that, the service chiefs have recommitted themselves, and they have assured us. We keep getting all these assurances, almost like Davido, giving us assurances, because we keep having this musical, thing about security in Nigeria. What Nigerians expect is that, that meeting next week with the service chiefs will not be a circus where they will come and tell us the same familiar tales. No. Nigerians are worried, and it's not just the Senate. Last week, the coalition of northern groups met on this same subject. Northern leaders, governors, they came together. They were also talking about how they can collaborate, mutual collaboration, how they can help government, how they can come together. Both traditional rulers and political elite and the governors are met for 2 days in Abuja to discuss this subject. At Professor Patutomi's 68th birthday celebration, focusing on democracy and good governance, security was also the major issue discussed in the various contributions, with former governor of Anambra, Peter Obi, and former Speaker of the House of Reps, Honorable Tambuwal, saying that, look, and former governor of Sokoto, by the way, saying that governors need to be given more powers. But from one administration to the other, it's a function of who is the president. Yes, the Constitution says, governors are chief security officers in their states, but do they have the powers to do anything without reference to Abuja? In many instances, we have seen that they don't have powers to mobilize the troops, even in the face of emergencies in their states. Which is why part of the conversation, and I hope that there will be some serious talk when the Senate, focuses on this subject, about state police. The argument about state police is back on the table. There are persons who are saying, look, this was one of the recommendations from the National Conference of 2014. The fears that have been expressed about politicians hijacking the idea of state police, okay, can we even try it first? Even only as a way of preventing a situation where we're confronted, as we are, with the proliferation of vigilante groups, state units, every state setting up its own uniformed unit, working across purposes most of the time with the police. If we're going to have state police, let us get back to that conversation. If it is abused, then we will go back to it again. The one that I don't support is the general resort to self-help, or that people should, carry arms, that everybody should be licensed to own a gun. Look at how hungry people have been protesting all over Nigeria. You go and give guns to the same people who are hungry and angry. Yesterday in Suleja is in Niger State, very close to the Federal Capital Territory. There was also protest, Ebim Power protest. There was a Ebim Power protest also in Ogun State yesterday, in Abeokuta, I'm told, with Yaloja saying that, food is available, but it is not accessible. It is expensive. So these are the issues of security that, they have to look at. So it's good to talk to the security chiefs, but since they are expanding the list, now it should not just be security in terms of what they call kinetic or whatever. Security in a broad sense. Food insecurity is part of the problem. There is the health insecurity, even in the health sector. Security to be seen as the need for government to focus more appropriately on the well-being of the average Nigerian, and to give them hope and restore hope in concrete manner, rather than this Ebim Power trap in which Nigerians have found themselves.
Absolutely. Now, just to talk about the fact that yesterday this conversation was meant to have been had in the Senate. Unfortunately, as has been highlighted, a few critical stakeholders were unfortunately absent. In the case of the NSA, he had mentioned, reading a letter to the Senate President, that he was having a UK bilateral meeting with the UK on defense and seeing how Nigeria and the UK can strengthen partnerships in terms of providing support in the area of tackling insecurity. So very valid point right there. However, there have been conversations around why the postponement to the 13th of February. Perhaps would have expected that because of the seriousness and urgency of the matter on hand, that ought to have been brought forward, say Friday or Monday at the very latest. But 13th, next week, Tuesday, we'll be looking at the conversation, or perhaps the security chiefs and stakeholders in the security architecture of Nigeria appearing before the Senate. Some of the questions that ought to be asked, and critical things have already been highlighted, but I think it would be a great opportunity for the Senate to investigate or perhaps check the special investigation squad that was launched by the IG of police. It will be an opportunity to see how much money has gone into it, how effective that squad has been, and what they've been doing. Because currently, I believe they're just in 2 states with the hope to expand to other states in the country. Before a lot of money is expended on that endeavor, it would be great to know to what extent that impact of the squad has been. They have the police have come out with reports as to the number of people that have been apprehended, criminals, even weapons that have been mopped up in the system as a result of the intervention of the SIS. It would be great to probe further, especially in terms of fund allocation. Is it working? If it's not working, then to explore other options. The conversation with the NSA and the UK representatives also touched on a broad response to tackling insecurity, which would touch on investment in AI and technology. These are things that we have talked about a number of times. So maybe that's a question and a conversation for the Senate and the NSA and perhaps the other service chiefs next week, Tuesday. To what extent have we been able to deploy technology in the fight against insecurity? What more should be done? How much more investment? Should the Senate be looking at allocating more funding to this? And if so, how much money? Also, the meeting with the NSA and the UK representatives touched on human capacity development. We've talked a lot about the welfare of security agents, including the police, the military officers. We've even played videos here where we've seen some officers in uniform complaining bitterly because of almost a lack of a choice as to how they're faring. And we've talked about a number of times that how do you expect to send men and women like this who have to work in the most crude of conditions to go out there and defend lives and property? Perhaps those are questions as well in terms of what is the way forward? What should we begin to do? I think added to that list, or to expand that list further, the Minister of Interior was said to be invited as well as the DG of the NIA. I believe the Minister of Agriculture should also be in that meeting, because if we're going to address food insecurity, these are conversations that must be had. The NSA was included in that special committee on the intervention of food security because it's been highlighted that food security plays a critical role in national security. In the same vein, on the flip side, the Minister of Agriculture should also be brought forward to speak, because if we're looking at a holistic approach to tackling the issue, then we must look at even the causative factors, the issue around hunger in the country, the incentive for crime when people are suffering and cannot afford to eat, the fact that it makes crime a bit more attractive. The Senate President himself alluded to the fact that kidnapping had become a lucrative business, where we see in an industry where sums of money up to 100 million naira, 50 million naira are demanded for in the era of ransom. And unfortunately, people are paying because they have no choice. Even though it's been said a number of times that ransom ought not to be paid, it encourages criminality, but people are left with no choice but to do so, because if the Security Agents Act, then Nigerians do not want to spend their hard-earned money under this current the crisis of living situation, spend their hard-earned money to rescue their family members out of the den of kidnappers. So important conversations, and I believe all Nigerians ought to be interested to seeing how this will play out, and most importantly, beyond being a talk shop, because this was done in December 2023. It'd also be important to measure how much success or impact that conversation in December 2023 in the Senate has had on security agencies since, in the last 1 month or a little over 1 month. Finally, I'd also mention the fact that the Senate President has said that, they're not blaming the service chiefs, they are doing their best, they are trying, they just want to bring them in so that they can rub minds as to how to tackle this problem. Yes, we might want to encourage the security agencies. They're working, like we've said, under very difficult circumstances. But it will also be good to know how much money has been spent in the fight against insecurity so far. The weapons that have and the weapons and equipment that have been bought in recent times, and to what extent that has helped, and to see what more can be done. Very important. Accountability for money spent already, plans going forward in terms of what ought to be done, and finally, hopefully, a metric to measure just how successful the current security plan is. Move on to our next story this morning. A former member of the House of Representatives and chieftain of the All Progressives Congress, Dr. Cairo Ojogbo, is dead. Dr. Ojogbo died last night. He hails from Delta State and is a former director of projects in the past interim board of Niger Delta Development Commission. Right, very sad news this morning, Rufai. We've had the privilege of having Dr. Cairo Ojogbo with us here on the show a number of times as our guest. Your take on this very unfortunate news?
I'm aghast. It's a rude shock. Dr. Cairo Ojogbo was so full of life, bursting with life, effervescence, politician in Delta State. He serves on the board of the NDDC, defends his position to the best of his ability. He will be greatly missed by his lovers and his admirers. What else can I say? But that's life, and life is about the impact you leave behind. It's about the capacity to be able to live and let others live. And definitely in the minds of those that loved him dearly, Dr. Cairo Ojogbo will be greatly missed. We all remember his time in the NDDC, and we cannot forget, how he advanced his positions, but also the challenges that surrounded the NDDC at his time when he was there, and various allegations. That was the time there was a need for forensic audits. It was around that time too the NDDC was shrouded around the Professor Ponde controversy and the fainting spell. It was around that time too the NDDC was surrounded with a lot of challenges, and he kept on defending his position that he had nothing to do with all of those challenges, albeit financial, that the NDDC had. All we can just say is commiserations to the family, God rest his soul, but it's indeed a very rude, shock, the passing of Dr. Cairo Ojogbo, frontline politician in Delta State. Is, definitely gone across the aisles a couple of times in his political life. This is sad. Life.
Dr. Cairo Ojogbo, was on this program again and again, particularly in the lead up to the 2023 general elections, and quite a prominent, active politician, particularly in the politics of Delta State. You will recall that at the time, ahead of the elections in the Delta State, he was not on the same page with some other persons, but still he did not have, he had the courage of his conviction to put his thoughts across. He had been a member of the House of Representatives, representing the Ika federal constituency. He was later an APC chieftain. It's unfortunate, the circumstances of his death. He was said to have slumped and died, according to one newspaper report, while watching the Super Eagles versus Bafana match yesterday evening. And that, when a penalty was awarded against Nigeria, the equalizer by, South Africa, one report says that, he just slumped and died. So again, sudden death. And sudden death, the sudden death syndrome is something that is very, common these days, which is why, people are advised, to, do routine medical checkups, just to be sure that everything is in good condition. We commiserate with members of his family, his political associates, and also particularly, the Carnation, who, with his exit, have lost one of their, most prominent and illustrious sons. Yes, he was on the board of the NDDC, Niger Delta Development Commission, at a time when, that commission was very controversial. And that commission still remains controversial. But he will be remembered for his commitment to public service as a politician and for his contributions as a member of the House of Reps representing the Ka federal constituency. Like everyone else, he wanted the best for his own people and was passionate beyond the Carnation, about Nigeria, the umbrella nation. Pardon me for saying Carnation. People from that area, they talk about the Carnation in the same manner in which Egba people talk about the Egba nation, which in fact is older than the Nigerian nation. But, the subject before us is the passing of, a prominent Nigerian who made his mark.
A prominent Nigerian who made his mark, doctor turned politician, a fearless one as described by a number of people. And if you've heard Dr. Ojo
and by Dalo Lineno, only if Konisi, when I saw any many rock one Basinketa, as a Copasinketa Malo no I think which Korea zero, and the Cosidi, and the king of the Ifabia from Prime Minister Kuni Rockwa, Zoduki Biabo, Iabo, Ibo Media, Kaisipo when you were telling Kozia do Kemba, Geniki when you Kubasta Makaya Bifa. Kabaroke drop for your comment, your own suggestion. Ni endali ne from Prime Minister Kuni Rockwa. Thank you so much and stay tuned at Igbo Media. Daro no munem kemesian.